Hey guys, welcome back for episode 3 of All the Mods 9. In between episodes, I did let this quarry run quite a bit, so we have a decent amount of resources stored up in here. Gold is still a little bit of an issue though. And I also got some of these chests upgraded as well as a couple of these furnaces. That way we can keep processing our resources. And I also upgraded both of these machines over here. And the infusing factory, which was the metallurgic infuser. And I mentioned at the end of the last episode that we could upgrade these to factories, but I don't think I mentioned that we can use a tier installer, which are real simple to craft. And then you can just shift right click onto these machines and it'll automatically upgrade it and keep its stored config settings. But to get started in this episode, I want to get some better power generation going because this quarry is really struggling on the power. And other machines that we make in the future are also going to need quite a bit of power. And to remedy that, I think we're going to use a little bit of the Powah mod, specifically the thermo generators. Now, the Powah mod is a little different than other mods in the way that we get into it. But before we can even get the very basic machines from Powah, we're going to need some of this dielectric paste. And this stuff, we're not going to use this recipe, we're going to use this one, just because we don't have a whole lot of blaze powder at the moment. And this is going to need lava buckets. So in order to produce lava buckets, we're going to make a couple of different machines. Well, really just one to make lava. And the other machine, the induction smelter, is going to allow us to make alloys of different types. So that's going to be useful in making this machine because we are going to need some Invar, which is an alloy. Although Invar is also used in the recipe for the induction smelter. So in order to make our first little bit of Invar, we're going to need to make some fire charges. And we're going to use coal, gunpowder, and blaze powder for this, just like you would in vanilla. Then we can take those fire charges, combine them up with some iron ingots and some nickel ingots to craft into a decent amount of Invar. Now, we don't want to have to keep doing that over and over again, and that's why we're going to make this machine. So for this machine, we're going to need a blast furnace, 2 Invar gears, a redstone flux coil, a 10 gear, which will then be upgraded into the machine frame, and that should be everything we need to make this machine, which is the induction smelter. Now we will have to supply this with a little bit of power, so we can place this down on our power line, and you can see it's filling up. Now this thing is fairly slow, but if we go ahead and throw a couple pieces of iron and a piece of nickel in here, that'll eventually smelt up and give us more Invar, and we can use this without having to have those fire charges. Now, on to the machine that's actually going to generate us our lava. We're going to need another machine frame, another flux coil, and another 2 Invar gears, and that'll allow us to make a magma crucible. Now, basically what this does is you can put in a variety of different materials, and it will turn it into its liquid version. So what we're looking for here is lava. One thing we can use is cobblestone, another one is obsidian. Cobblestone is obviously much cheaper, but I think in this scenario, we're going to go with netherrack because we don't really need that at the moment. And it is really easy to mine. So let's go ahead and get this thing down on our power line. Throw in a little bit of netherrack. And after quite a long waiting period, because this machine is slow as well, at least when it doesn't have any upgrades, we will get 1 bucket of lava. We can go ahead and grab that out with a bucket. And I'll also need to swim down this river a little bit and collect up some clay. So that we can craft up our first couple sets of dielectric paste. This will then be used to make a couple of things, and that's going to be these dielectric rods. They come in the vertical and the horizontal. And to make these, we just need a few iron bars, and we can craft up with 6 electric paste and 3 bars. We can craft up 8 of each of the type of rods, and along with a little bit more iron, we'll be able to make our casings. And these casings are actually used to make a majority of the machines from Powah, if not all of them. And the first thing we're going to want to make is an energizing orb. Now we can place this down over here somewhere, but by itself it's not really going to do anything. we're going to need a way to wirelessly send power into here. And no, the flux point won't work. What we have to use for that is actually these energizing rods from Powah. So this brings in another component that we haven't made yet, which is the capacitors. So we can make some regular basic capacitors with this recipe, and then we can craft those down into tiny basic capacitors just by putting one into the crafting grid. Then we can use that to make our very first energizing rod. And I think I'm actually going to go ahead and make a couple of these. So all we got to do is we place these down on our power line. And if we stare at it, you can see in the bottom middle, it'll show that they're filling up with power. Now these should automatically connect to this energizing orb here. We just need something to process through it. So I believe the first thing is iron and gold. And when we put some of that in there, that'll get us energized steel. Now, the way that Powah works is there's a bunch of different tiers. So you start with energized, or you start with the starter, then you go up to basic, and you work your way through all of these tiers of steel and then all the different types of crystals. And as you work your way through them, you will get better power generation and better power transfer. Pretty much everything to do with power is going to get better as you go up the tiers. So we can go ahead and grab these energizing rod starters up, and we can upgrade these to the basic version without actually even having to have the energized steel. Just a couple of basic capacitors, some quartz, and another dielectric casing. And that's going to go straight back onto our line. And if I get the ingredients again, you'll notice that this actually crafts much faster with those because they can send more power to this energizing orb. You can also use more than just two of them. You could have an entire line of cables surrounding this with these on them if you wanted to, but I find that two is a pretty good sweet spot. Now for the thermogens, which is what we're actually going to be using to generate power. If we go ahead and take a peek here, you can see that as we go up the tiers, it's going to significantly increase in power generated, starting at 40 FE per tick at the starter version, all the way up to 3.5 thousand FE per tick at the nitro tier, which is the highest tier. Now, another thing to note about this is there's different heat sources. So if you were to use blazing crystals, that would 2.8 times the power gen, or if you were to use soul lava, that would 9 times the power gen. The base 1 times is what you're seeing the numbers here for, and that would be with lava below it. One other thing to note is to craft these things, we need thermoplates, and we're going to need a lot of these things, which uses blaze powder. So we're going to need to head back to the nether and kill quite a few blazes. Well, I'm back at the base, and 21 should be enough to hold us off for a little while, but it looks like we got a horde of zombies coming our way for whatever reason. Your alignment increase plus 10? I would assume that's from Corel Tombstone, but I've never seen that before. Alright, we got all of them killed. We got Fortuitous Militia Raiders. That's some kind of raider thing. And then click here to upgrade our knowledge of death. Okay. Yeah, this is Corel Tombstone stuff here. I don't know which one of these upgrades I'd want to do. I don't know that I've ever even actually used this before. Well, I think I'm just going to go with this. It's called Gladiator, and it increases damage and reduces damage received. So if I just pump all 3 of the points that I have into there, that will give me plus 15% additional damage dealt and plus 15% less damage suffered. So, I mean, can't really complain about that too much. Oh, and we also got a Corel Tombstone reward. What does that give me? A Frostbite 3 enchanted book. That doesn't sound very good. Anyway, back to what we were doing. We got 26 blaze rods total, including the 5 that I already had in here. And we're going to need to convert at least a few of these down into blaze powder. I'd say maybe 12 of them to start off with. Now, normally we would just craft these down into blaze powder using the vanilla recipe. But I'm sure here in this pack we have a better conversion recipe. Like this. We can get a guaranteed 3, or actually it looks like a guaranteed 4 because both of these say 100% chance. And all we have to do is craft a squeezer. So we need a little bit of wood, some sticks, and some iron. Just like that. And to go along with this thing, we're also going to need something to supply a redstone signal. So we'll use a stone button. Now this can really be placed anywhere because it doesn't need power. Now if we were to upgrade this to the mechanical squeezer, then it would need power. But for right now, this should do just fine. So we right click our item in, get up here on top, and just jump on it. That's going to give us our 4 blaze powder. We hit the button to reset it. And we just need to do this with all 12 of our blaze rods. Which net us a total of 48 blaze powder. So we can go ahead and make a couple of these thermo plates. I think we're going to need 3 of them to make the first starter, which means we're going to need some more capacitors. And then we can make our starter. I'm going to go ahead and make up a second one of these. And with a few more of the same ingredients, we can go ahead and upgrade both of these to the basic tier. And following the basic tiers where our energized steel that we made earlier comes into play, this is where we need it to make the hardened tier of machines. And we also need it to make these hardened capacitors. So we're going to need to make 2 large capacitors, which can then be turned into hardened. I guess we get 2 hardened from 1 large, so I didn't actually need 2 of those. Or I guess I did because we're making 2 of these machines. Either way. Then we use those hardened capacitors along with a little bit more energized steel to make our hardened thermo generator. And now that we have 2 of these, we'll be able to generate 150 Fe per each one, which will be 300 total. But I think we might have just enough blaze rods to go up 1 more tier, making it 600 Fe per tick total. And all we got to do for that is make some blazing crystals. And hold on, how many of these do we need? We're going to need 4, 5 per generator. So I'm going to need to turn 10 of these blaze rods over. And, you know, this works the same way. We just put the blaze rod in. It's going to send the power into it. And after a few seconds, we can pull out the blazing crystal. And at this point, you know the drill. We make our blazing capacitors from those crystals. We need to make a few more of these guys. And then we can upgrade both of these into the blazing thermogens. Now, I've already explained that these guys need lava below them. We're going to set these up right back here. So we'll dig a couple holes in the ground. We will grab a couple buckets of lava from our magma crucible. And we can place these above it. Now, on top of needing lava below them, they also need water. So if I put a bucket of water in there, we should see the power is going to start going up 300 Fe a tick at a time. Oh, probably need to turn that off. Let's see. Game rule. I think it's do fire tick and false. That way we don't go burning anything up and we don't have our fire spreading. All right, yes, this one's filling up with power. This one's not because we didn't add water to it. So we're going to want a way to supply water to both of these infinitely. And that's where this sink from cooking for blockheads comes into play. We need a little bit of terracotta, a water bucket, and some iron ingots. And we can craft our sink. Now on top of that, this is going to be an infinite water source. We're going to need some way to transfer that water around. So we're going to need some form of pipe. The most basic one that we could do is the fluid pipe from the pipes mod with a Z. And all we got to do, actually I probably also need a pipe wrench, which needs a couple of flint. So let me grab a couple of those out and we can craft our pipe wrench. All right, now all we have to do is we will set our sink somewhere accessible. Hook up a couple of pipes to the back of these, and then shift right click, and that's going to set this little section, this little node is what I'm going to call it, into extract mode. And you can actually come in here and add upgrades and stuff, but with no upgrade, that should be plenty of power transfer. Oh, okay. And check this out. So I just claimed my quest rewards. I just used the claim all button up here in the top right. And I got a bunch of extra capacitors, and I got a couple more energizing rods, some of these basic cables, which are just crafted with some dielectric rods, a basic capacitor, and some iron ingots. And then we can use these basic cables to actually transfer the power out of here. Now, these will just transfer just like these basic universal cables. The only difference is these cables don't have an internal buffer like these ones do, but that's okay because we actually want to use one of these flux plugs like we did in the last episode up there, because I still want the priority to be here. It'll be sent to here, and then it'll go over to the mining dimension. And if we didn't use this, it would, and we just connected it up to this energy cube, it would never make its way to the mining dimension. So let's go ahead and connect that up. And we'll turn on bypass limit in case we extend these out and want to add more power. Although I imagine a lot of the stuff that we have over here is going to get moved over there in the next episode, and we're going to start getting ready for our castle. But either way, this is already a significant upgrade over the power that we have up there, and it doesn't have to be 300 blocks in the sky. We are just generating the power, and let's see if we can go take a look and see how we're doing in our mining dimension now. Oh yeah, that's mining a pretty good bit faster. You can't really tell that there's more power coming into here, but you can see how much quicker the ores are being mined. And we are starting to back up on quite a few things. Or not back up necessarily, but build up quite a few resources. Like 600 draconium, 20 ancient debris, 150 diamonds. Lots of good stuff happening over here. And I will probably come in between episodes and extend this out a little bit further. I'm just not too sure about how long this episode is going to last, because right now I'm in the middle of moving, and we've got a lot of different things changing right now, and I'm sitting in a room with no AC recording this video, so it's getting really hot. But there is one other thing I want to take care of before we end off this episode, and that's going to first and foremost be to craft up a charger. And we are also going to need to connect this up to some power. Now with this connected up to power, we can throw a compass in here. I actually found that compass in a chest somewhere in the last episode. And what that turned into is a meteorite compass from Applied Energistics. So if you know anything about Applied Energistics, well, it's awesome. That's to put it simply. Applied Energistics is basically digital storage. We'll be able to store all of our things in a drive like we would on a computer, rather than in physical chests. And we still can use physical storage if we want to for certain things, especially when it comes to storage drawers. But this meteorite compass is going to point us to a meteor, which we do have one of right here. And you'll notice when you go over the meteor, it's going to start spinning. That is really important for a scenario where if you were to fly over a meteor and the meteor was underground, like it had got buried, then you would still be able to dig down and find it. Now, there's a couple of important things about these meteors. Let me go ahead and vein mine up some of this skystone because we will need it later. Inside the meteor, you have a couple of things. One, you have this mysterious cube, and if you go ahead and break that, you will get all of your presses. These are to make various different types of circuits in the inscriber. And then also inside the meteor, you have these crystals. So you have your Certus quartz buds. So if you mine these, when they're not fully grown, you will get Certus quartz dust, which can be smelted into silicone. And if you have one, I don't think this one's fully grown. No. But basically, these work very similar to amethyst in vanilla Minecraft. These crystals are going to slowly grow out of here. And then once they reach a certain growth level, you can harvest them and you'll get Certus Quartz crystals, which you can also get from using charged Certus Quartz with the Certus Quartz dust in water. But these are not necessarily going to be useful to us. Not in this pack at least, maybe in another pack. So we're going to go ahead and mine all of these up. And you'll notice that when I mine them up, they degrade a tier. So the ones that were chipped are now damaged. The ones that were flawed are now, or something along those lines. I don't remember exactly what the tiers are. But if we take some of these damaged ones and we place them back down, when we break them, we will get Certus Quartz blocks. And this is exactly what we're looking for. If we were to take that and put it in here, we can craft it down into Certus Quartz from GregTech or Certus Quartz crystals from Applied Energistics. But that's not exactly what we need right now. What we need to do is take these back over to our base, and we're going to turn these into an infinite source that does not require us to grow the crystals. I guess technically we will still have to grow something though. But this is going to be where mystical agriculture comes in handy. So if you remember earlier on, we set up the mystical agriculture and we have a pretty decent amount of inferium essence built up now. And we'll need to use our crystals to craft this down a couple of times into, well, tertium is the tier. So these are going to be tier 3 seeds that we're going to make. And on top of the essence, we're also going to need a little bit of red wool. This is going to be used to make the infusion altar, as well as 8 infusion pedestals. Oh, and we will also need another redstone signal, so we'll use a stone button again. Now let's find somewhere to place this. Right back here somewhere should be fine. So if we place our infusion altar down, it's going to give us a little outline and tell us where to place our pedestals. So we can place these all around here. And the last one should go there. Then we get our button here so we can activate the ritual for crafting our seeds. And let's open up JEI real quick. So this is going to be our recipe. We already have the tertium and Certus Quartz blocks. We do need a few, or I guess just one prosperity seed base. So for that, we are going to need some seeds and a few prosperity shards. Then we can take the seed, surround it with the prosperity shards, and we get our prosperity seed base. At which point we just need to place all of the items into these slots in the crafting altars. Then we hit the button. You're going to see everything start shooting towards the middle. And that should give us our Certus Quartz seed, which means we effectively have infinite Certus Quartz that will never run out, because these do eventually run out and just turn into regular Certus Quartz. And the only thing left to do is we're going to need a hoe as well. Actually, we can just use the dirt that's over here. Then we will want to hoe the dirt, right click it with a piece of tertium essence to make it the tier 3 for the tier 3 seed. And we can plant that seed down and it will now start to grow when it has a high enough light level. Or if we take our watering can, we should be able to speed up the growth on this all the way until it is at 100%. We can right click to harvest it, and that'll give us Certus Quartz essence, which we can then use to craft into Certus Quartz crystals, Certus Quartz dust, and the various different types of presses. Basically, this is just an infinite source, although it is kind of slow right now. We can add more seeds and speed it up later on. And all of these crystals that I picked up earlier, I'm just going to break down, and we will actually craft these down into the Certus Quartz crystals, which will be a good place to get us started with AE2 in the next episode, which we're going to put over there in our castle when we get started on it. But I think this is where we're going to end this episode. I know this is going to be a short one, but I really hope you enjoyed. And if you did, make sure to drop down and leave a like, comment, and subscribe. And I will catch you in the next one.